Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us here on our third and final installment of the Theros Constructed preview here on puremtgo.com. As we saw on Tuesday, we went over the white and blue cards. Wednesday, we went over the black and red, and today, we are going over the green, the multicolored, the artifacts, and the land. Let's go ahead and start off with the green. Our first card is a 4/5 for 5 that has Heroic. Whenever you cast a spell that targets Anthosa, Citizen Hero, up to 3 target lands you control each become 2/2 warrior creatures until end of turns. They're still lands. I like Heroic in green a lot because I feel like that's the color that is going to benefit from Heroic the most. You have Giant Growth, you have Enlarge, you have the Savage Surge reprint, and I guess you have Savage Surge from Return to Ravnica as well. So if we look at this, on turn 4, we'll make a 4/5 because we're going to have Elvish Mystics and maybe the Hexproof Utopia tree. So on turn 4, we cast this. Turn 5, we give it a Giant Growth. And 3 of our 4 lands are now 2/2s. And we attack for 10 on turn 4. Or turn 5, rather. I'm sorry. I like the benefits. I like how easy it is to trigger Heroic in green. And I think that this hero will be one of the more played Heroic cards out of the set. Moving on to Boon Satyr. It's a 4/2 for 3 with Flash and a Bestow of 5, where the enchanted creature gets +4/+2. I don't care about the Bestow cost. I like the 4/2 for 3 with Flash. Wolfear Avenger saw play, mainly I think because of the Flash, but also because it had the regeneration ability. This guy's not nearly as good, but it's another way to trigger Heroic that gives your guys a gigantic benefit. He'll see some play just because, 4/2s on turn 2 are nothing to laugh at. Next we have the Bow. I like the Bow because it shows the 4 seasons. The +1/+1 counter, the 2 damage with the creature of flying, gaining 3 life, or restocking your library of 4 cards. Death Touch is a cute ability. I like the Bow, but I'm on the fence about it. I don't know if it'll actually see play. I think it will, mainly for the gaining 3 life and the +1/+1 counter ability that it has. And with that, we'll move on to Commune with the Gods. I'm pretty excited about this in Pauper. Looking at the top 5 cards, getting the best creature and enchantment out of them and putting them into your hand for 2 mana is a pretty good deal. Also, you're putting the rest of these into your graveyard. So, whereas Standard had Mulch, Tracker's Instinct, Faithless Looting, and we're losing those cards, we have Commune with the Gods now, to where the loss of Mulch is still pretty huge, but with Commune and Grizzly Salvage, we still have multiple ways to put a lot of cards into the graveyard for cheap while you're still fixing your draw. Commune with Rescue from the Underworld seems like a pretty good combo, but we'll see. We don't have Restoration Angel or Thragtusk or any of those dorks to bring back anymore, so I do like this card a lot. I think it'll be very good in Standard and Pauper. We have a 3 casting cost sorcery that exiles target artifact or enchantment and fade into Antiquity. I like this a lot more because it is a exile ability for gods. I'm willing to pay 1 extra to be able to deal with a god, and I'm willing to make it a sorcery speed effect just so I don't have to worry about an indestructible thing. Mistcutter Hydra is an 0/0 for X and a green. It can't be countered. It has haste and protection from blue. And it enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. So for 3, we're getting a 2/2 haste pro blue, can't be countered. Not too bad. I like the idea of this in a Simic deck, where you go turn 1, experiment 1, turn 2, Sage, turn 3, grow the experiment 1, grow the Sage, make a Mistcutter Hydra for a lot, and you just keep growing it with the evolve mechanic. Pro Blue may not be super relevant in Standard right now. I mean, there's still Unsummon and Voyage's End. It may not be super relevant in Modern right now, because most of the decks that are good don't play blue. I like that this card exists. I like Hydras. I believe that this card is better than the Spider out of Dragon's Maze. And if there is a super good blue deck, then the Spider and Mistcutter Hydra will make sure that super good blue deck is in check. We have the God of the Hunt, 6/6 for 4, nothing to scoff at. Again, very easy, like the Red God, to get Devotion, because you're obviously going to be playing with a lot of creatures, and it gives the creatures you control trample, and target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Easy Devotion, easy 6/6 for 4. People played Hunted Wumpus, people will play this. I don't really see too much of a drawback to it, because even if you don't have Devotion, you're making your other creatures bigger. And we'll move on. That card's good for Standard. World Eater. XX Monstrosity X. It is a 5/5 for 4. And when it becomes monstrous, it deals X damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures your opponent control. Each of those creatures deal damage equal to its power to him. 5/5s for 4 have seen play since Juzamjin. We've got another one in Dreadbridge Goliath. I don't know which one's better yet. I want to hedge and say that the Deadbridge Goliath is better. But I may be wrong. Do I think this guy will see play? Yes. Just off of his stats, 5/5s for 4 are very good. And considering that this guy can come into play on turn 3, thanks to Elvish Mystic, yeah, I mean, he's a fine card. Moving on, we have Reverent Hunter. This guy gets a number of 1/1 counters on it equal to its devotion to green when it enters play. So, at its base, you're looking at a 2/2 for 3. And that's just off of him, or off of just casting him. Again, green plays a lot of creatures, so you're going to have a lot of green permanents in play, hopefully, whenever you cast them. I can see this guy being a 4/4 or a 5/5 very easily for the low cost of 3 mana. I think he's neat. I think he will see, again, a decent amount of play. Sylvan Caryatid is a card that I think of when I think of fair hexproof. You have a 0/3 defender with hexproof that can tap to add any or 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. I think that's a fair hexproof card. You're not going to be slapping auras on this guy and going to town while your opponent can't deal anything or do anything with against that creature. This to me is more fair. It's more what green wants to do. You want to ramp into things. You want to cast giant fatties. You don't want to lose your 2-drop mana producer to Magma Jet or to a Lightning Strike. I like this card. I see a lot of people comparing it to Utopia Tree, but I believe that this card's just bounds better than Utopia Tree, mainly because of the hexproof. We'll see play. Moving on to the green cards, or gold cards. We've got Annex and Siamede, a 3/2 for 3, first strike vigilance, heroic. When you cast a spell that targets them, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample. Okay, neat. Red white humans, sure. Again, I think this is going to be harder to trigger heroic off of, because the red spells that you want remove blockers, and the white spells that you want to cast also remove blockers. I mean, you don't want to chain to the rocks your own guy, right? 8 mana for a 5/5 flyer that when it dies or enters the battlefield, you exile target permanent. I don't see many people playing this for its fair casting cost. I see a lot of people trying to rescue this from the underworld. The new Angel of Despair is neat. It's got a giant flying cat. So Reddit will love it. I believe this card will see plenty of standard play, and it might see some modern play if you ever want a Birthing Pod into an 8-drop. I don't see that actually ever happening, because then you have to play with 7-drops. But it's a neat card. Being a black answer for a target permanent is pretty neat and pretty good for the color. We have our Planeswalker, Nightmare Reaver. 3 loyalty, 3 mana, +2, exile the top 3 cards of target's opponent library. -X, you put a creature card with converted mana cost X exiled with Nightmare Weaver onto the battlefield under your control. It also has a Nightmare. -10, exile all cards from all opponents' hands and graveyards. The -10, not very impressed with. The +2, pretty impressed with, and the -X, pretty impressed with. I love Planeswalkers that mill. Me and Jace Memory Adept have been friends for a long time, and I could see a black-blue control deck with Jace and the Nightmare Weaver teaming up on your opponent's library. Still, that -10, just meh. What a weird ultimate. I mean, I'm sure that there's plenty of times where it's going to be good, where wanting to, against the control deck, wanting to exile their hand is great. And that this Planeswalker costs 3, you should be able to slide it underneath counter magic, because, well, you've got a 2 casting cost Force Spike, you've got Syncopate, and you've got Dissolve. So the counter magic, oh, and Negate. But Negate's mostly an out-of-the-board card. So the counter magic, you should be able to slide underneath that pretty easily. This is one of the cards that I don't think is getting enough hype, but I think when enough people play with it and it starts putting up results, that it will find its home, and a lot of people will be happy playing with it. Destructive Revelry. You destroy a target artifact or enchantment, so it deals 2 damage to that creature, to that permanent's controller. A neat way to deal with the enchantment creatures. Neat way to deal with Bestow. Versatile removal that also shocks. Not bad. 3/3s for 2 in Fleecemane Lion. That becomes a 4/4 when it becomes monstrous, and it has hexproof and indestructible. Call of the Conclave, Watch Wolf, those cards see play. This card will see play. It's a nice mana sink for an aggro deck if you don't have a turn 5 play. And a 4/4 hexproof indestructible, nothing to laugh at. We have our Prophet, a 2/3 for 5. Untap all creatures and lands you control during each other player's untap step. You may cast creature cards as though they had flash. Okay, so we've got a mix between Teferi, Yeva, Seedborn Muse. Though I guess not. Okay, we've got a mix between Yeva and Seedborn Muse. It doesn't untap artifacts. Oh no. Which, in this standard environment, not really that big of a deal. Being able to cast creatures during your opponent's instep, huge deal. This card's fine. This card will see some play, and it's grade in EDH. Psychic Intrusion is a 5-drop sorcery. They reveal your opponent reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-land from it and exile it. You can cast that card for as long as it remains exiled, and you may spend mana as though or mana of any color to cast it. I've noticed a theme in this set that the mana colors sometimes don't matter, and I like that, because I can see this card being printed as a 5-drop that doesn't have the you may spend mana as though or mana of any color to cast that spell clause. I like it a lot. Take their bomb and beat them with it later, or take a board wipe and make sure they can't cast it, or take their Sphinx's Revelation so they don't get the benefit of it. I like it. I think it's a sideboard card, but we'll see. Reaper of the Wilds is a 4/5 for 4. When another creature dies, you can scry 1. You get Death Touch and Hexproof. I like it more for a 4/5 Hexproofer than I do anything else. It's a little underpowered, but a lot of things are not going to live against this guy in combat, thanks to the Death Touch. Spellheart Chimera, Flying Trample. Its power is equal to the number of instant and sorcery cards in the graveyard. Yeah. I'm a big fan of Magnivore. My friend Andy won states a while ago with a blue-red Magnivore deck that cared about sorceries in the graveyard. I want Magnivore to be played in Modern so bad, and a lot of the problem with it in Modern is you just have Magnivore to win with. You have to rely on getting Stone Rains and Molten Rains to just, and Eye of Nowheres, to just destroy their mana base. But having another guy that cares about instants and sorceries in the graveyard to help carry the load of the Magnivore is really neat. I think this guy sees play in Modern. I wish it were common so we could see play in Pauper even. And I think it'll see some play in Standard in a sort of Travis Wu blue-white-red Geist deck. We've got the new Factor Fiction and Steam Augury. You reveal the top 5 cards of your library and separate them into 2 piles. The important part is an opponent chooses one of those piles. That pile goes to your hand and the other goes into the graveyard. It's an instant, and I like it. It's fine. I liked Factor Fiction a lot. This card is not Factor Fiction. You're still going to get the card you want whenever you cast a spell. Be it a 1/4 split or a 3/2 split. I can see the mind games of going with a 4/1 split to maybe try to trick your opponent into saying, hey man, I really need this Sphinx's Revelation. You should give it to me instead of these 4 other cards. But to me, this card is a card that says, look at the top 5 cards, pick the 2 cards you really want, put those into your hand, put the other 3 into your graveyard. And I think that's how it's going to be played most of the time. We've got a 2/2 for a black and a red in Timerit, the Murder King. You sacrifice another dude, he shocks target player, you sacrifice a creature, and you can return him from your graveyard to your hand. He's cute. A lot of the 2-drops in black-red aren't seeing play anyways. This guy has 2 relevant abilities. I think you'll see play in black-red aggro. Our next is the Mythic Underworld Cerberus. It can't be blocked except by 3 or more creatures. Cards and graveyards can't be the targets of spell or abilities. And when it dies, exile it, and each player returns all creature cards from his or her graveyard to his or her hands. I'm more happy with a 6/6 for 5 that can't be blocked except by 3 or more creatures. Everything else doesn't really register to me. Alright, cards and graveyards can't be the targets of spells or abilities. There's not going to be a rescue from the underworld with this guy in play. When it dies, it hoses Reanimator. Or when it dies, it hoses the guy that played Supreme Verdict. Still, it's a 6/6 for 5 that can't be blocked except by 3 or more creatures. You got me. Xenagos the Reveler is a 3 loyalty planeswalker for 4. His +1 ability is add X mana in any combination of red and or green to your mana pool, where X is the number of creatures you control. Its 0 ability is put a 2/2 red and green Satyr creature token into haste onto the battlefield. And its ultimate is exile the top 7 cards of your library. You may put any number of creature and or land cards from among them onto the battlefield. This guy reminds me of Koth because of the mana ability, and reminds me of Garruk Relentless because of the Satyr creature token ability. And it also reminds me of the new Garruk and its ultimate. There's a lot of good green planeswalkers. I don't know how relevant his adding mana ability is going to be. I love that he protects himself and eventually kills your opponent with the Satyrs. I enjoy the ultimate. The ultimate doesn't have any qualifiers like they have to be green creatures or anything silly like that. Just thinking, you cast this guy on turn 3, put him up to 4, maybe make another dude on turn 3 with your +1. Then turn 4, he's up to 5 loyalty. Turn 5, he's up to 6. And then turn 6, you ultimate him. There's probably some really neat things you can do with those creatures on turn 7 that are all coming into the battlefield at the same time. It's a shame Craterhoof Behemoth has rotated out. He's neat. We'll move on. We'll go to Acro and Horse. This is the Trojan Horse of the set. It's an 0/4 for 4 with Defender. When it enters the battlefield, an opponent gains control of it. And at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent puts a 1/1 white soldier creature token onto the battlefield. It is a cheaper Assemble a Legion. It is less color restrictive than Assemble a Legion. It's very flavorful. I think it is a neat way for a control deck to possibly win. But I wouldn't put all my eggs into that basket because an 0/4 for 4 kind of dies to a lot of stuff. We have Traveler's Amulet. You search your library for a basic land card, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. I like mana fixing. This format seems to be devoid of it. The new standard, at least. I like this card in Pauper. And that's pretty much it. Nice little bit of mana fixing for standard, and nice little bit of mana fixing for Pauper. Pyxis of Pandemonium. Each player exiles the top card of his or her library face down. Sacrifice the Pyxis of Pandemonium for 7 mana. Each player turns face up all cards he or she owns exiled, then puts all permanent cards among them onto the battlefield. I think this is a neat anti-control card because they're pretty much going to be putting a lot of lands into play, and you're going to be putting in not lands. Also, it helps mill. So there's that. We are on to the lands now. We have Nykthos Shrine to Nyx. A lot of people are calling this the new Cabal Coffers. I don't think it's anywhere close to being the new Cabal Coffers. In fact, I am pretty sure that I put this card onto this little movie to say that I don't like it at all. Choose a color, add to your mana pool an amount of mana of that color equal to your devotion of that color. What deck wants this? Does an aggro deck want to pay 2 mana to get 3 from a Boros Reckoner? Granted, that's an extreme example. It's going to tap for 1 colorless if you're a control deck, unless there's a god in play. And then at that, you're paying 2 to get 1. Again, an extreme example. I don't think this card's good. I don't think this card's worth any of the hype. And no, this card's not going to bring back mono black control. You have Unknown Shores, a common. Add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. It's another land source that can help fix your mana in Pauper. It might see some play in control decks and standard. And we'll just move on from there. The last 5 cards are the temples. When they were previewed or spoiled, a lot of people complained about them because, well, we just got guild gates. Well, guild gates are fine if you're playing Maze's End, but really, if you were going to play a guild gate in your deck and had access to a temple, why would you not play the temple unless you were playing Maze's End? You get to scry over a guild gate. Granted, aggro decks don't care about these much. They would rather have the buddy lands from M14 and Innistrad. These cards are going to be great for control. They're going to be great for mid-range. They're going to smooth your draws. They're going to put dead things on the bottom. These temples are great. I just think that we're so used to having shock lands and buddy lands in standard that we've gotten a little spoiled. So, if you want to play Maze's End, play Guild Gates. And by all means, play Maze's End. I think that there's going to be a very viable Maze's End deck in the new standard. But if you're a control deck and you're looking for ways to manipulate your draw, play the temples. I think they're great. I think there's been a lot of knee-jerk reaction about, oh man, these cards are just awful. And I think when people actually start to play with the temples, they're going to be very surprised at how good they are. And triumphantly, we are done here. I want to thank you for watching all 3 of the Theros preview videos here on PureMTGO.com. I hope you've enjoyed them. I hope they've opened up your mind a little bit and have made you consider things that you may not have considered. I've enjoyed making and producing these. So hopefully for the next set, we'll be able to do another video series about our previews. Thanks again for watching. If I missed something, hit me up in the comments. Let me know. Hit me up on Twitter. Just want to thank you all again. Have a good day. Enjoy your pre-release this weekend. Goodbye.